Why does your child say no to the exact thing they want? Welcome to this explainer. I am so glad you're here. And honestly, if you are listening right now, let's just take a collective deep breath. If you're a parent, a caregiver, or really anyone who spends time with young kids, you have absolutely stood there, completely baffled, thinking to yourself, why is this happening? Why is literally everything suddenly so difficult? Well, I want to reassure you right off the bat, you are definitely not alone. Today, we're going to deeply unpack the fascinating reality behind your child's constant refusals. We're going to transform your daily frustration into crystal clear clarity by looking at exactly what is going on inside their little minds when they push back. We'll dive into the biology, the emotions, and the deeply rooted needs that are actually driving this behavior. So, to get us there, we have a really clear roadmap today. We're going to cover Section 1, the power of no, Section 2, a brain under construction, 3 reasons for no, 4 common parenting mistakes, 5 strategies that actually work, and finally, number 6, a new perspective. My absolute goal here is to lower your cognitive load and give you some highly practical help in just a few minutes. All right, let's jump right into Section 1, the power of no, when everything turns into a battle.
You know exactly what these battlegrounds look like, right? And you know how physically and emotionally draining they can be. Picture this. You're just trying to get out the door in the morning. You're already running 5 minutes late. You ask your child to do something incredibly simple, something they've literally done 100 times before, like put on their shoes. And what's the answer? An immediate definitive no. Or maybe it happens during a really sweet moment of connection. You lovingly offer them their absolute favorite snack. I mean, the exact snack they just begged you for 5 minutes ago. But because you cut it the wrong way or maybe just presented it at the wrong moment, boom, no. And then, of course, there's the end of the day. You tell them it's time for bed because they are clearly exhausted, they're rubbing their eyes, practically falling over, and yet, no. Somehow, the most routine, mundane parts of your day turn into this immediate fiery resistance. It's incredibly frustrating to offer something a child actually wants or genuinely needs, only to be met with a seemingly impenetrable brick wall. It feels so personal, doesn't it? It feels like defiance. But if we look a little closer, this isn't just random stubbornness. Something entirely different is going on here.
That brings us to Section 2, a brain under construction. What's actually going on?
Let's think about the adult processing side of things first. When you give an instruction, your fully developed adult brain is operating on logic, efficiency, and sequence. To you, an instruction is just a logical task that simply needs to be checked off a list so you can move on with your day, right? Put on your shoes is just step 1 to getting to the grocery store. Time for bed is a logical necessity because, well, the clock says 8 o'clock. But when we look at a child's processing, it's a whole different story. Their brain isn't fully developed yet. The parts of the brain responsible for logic, self-control, future planning, and rational decision-making, they're quite literally still under construction. They just don't have access to those tools yet. However, the emotional center of their brain is extremely active and highly sensitive. So feelings of frustration, excitement, and overwhelm, they hit them incredibly fast and with massive intensity. When you ask them to do a simple task, they aren't processing it as a logical step in a sequence. Actually, it feels to them like immense pressure. It feels like their current joy is being abruptly taken away, and most importantly, it feels like they are suddenly losing all control over their own physical body and their immediate environment.
The crucial point here is understanding what we call the no reflex. When a young child feels that sudden wave of emotional pressure, saying no becomes their absolute fastest way to respond. Think of it like a biological shield. They haven't thought it through. They aren't sitting there maliciously plotting an argument to ruin your morning. They really aren't trying to be difficult. Their developing brain is simply throwing up an instant knee-jerk defense mechanism to protect a feeling of control, a feeling of choice, and a feeling of safety in a world where they are, frankly, incredibly small and vulnerable. No is just the easiest, quickest word they have to stop the world from spinning too fast. Once you begin to see this as a rapid biological reflex rather than a calculated insult to your authority, well, that constant no starts to make a lot more sense, and our compassion can finally start to replace our frustration.
So let's dive into Section 3. 3 reasons for no. Decoding the signal.
That constant no usually boils down to 3 distinct reasons, and it's kind of our job to decode which one is happening. First is control. Stop and truly think about a child's world for a second. It is entirely dictated by giants. From the very moment they wake up, their life is a constant stream of instructions. Sit here, eat this, wear that jacket, stop touching that, come over here. No becomes their desperate attempt to hold on to just a tiny bit of say in a world where they are constantly directed and managed. Second is overwhelm. Sometimes it's actually not the specific request itself that they're rejecting. It's the fact that there is simply too much happening, too fast. Moving from playtime to dinner time or from the house to the car, that requires a massive shift in their brain. If there are too many transitions, too much noise, or too many demands stacked on top of each other, it leads to a complete sensory and emotional shutdown. It's not purposeful resistance. Their overloaded brain is just pulling the emergency brake and taking the quickest way out. And third, perhaps the deepest and most overlooked reason of all, is connection.
Let's look a lot closer at that deep need for connection, because honestly, this changes everything. Sometimes, when they refuse you, they aren't actually rejecting you at all. They are closely watching you. They are silently asking a pivotal, foundational question. What happens if I push here? Are we still okay? They're wondering, if I'm not perfectly compliant, do you still love me? Will you get extremely upset and withdraw your affection, or will you stay calm and steady? For a developing child, true safety doesn't come from the physical walls of your home, and it doesn't come from the rigid rules you set. It comes entirely from how you respond when they push against those rules. When they are messy, difficult, and defiant, they're looking to see if your love is conditional. The no is often a brilliant subconscious signal designed specifically to test the structural integrity and the absolute safety of your relationship.
Let's move on to Section 4, Common Parenting Mistakes, where we get stuck.
It is fascinating and a little humbling to see how our totally natural parenting instincts can accidentally backfire. And please give yourself immense grace here, because these reactions are universally human. For example, we often react to a no by immediately pushing harder. We raise our voice slightly and say, "Just do it, I've asked you 3 times already." But to the child's highly sensitive emotional brain, this aggressive push signals a direct threat. It triggers a power struggle and a further loss of control, so their instinct is to push back even harder. It just becomes your emotional brain battling their emotional brain. Second, we tend to repeat instructions over and over in a loop. Shoes on, come on, we're late, shoes on, let's go, shoes. But very quickly, our words just become meaningless background noise. Think of the teacher in a Charlie Brown cartoon, want, want, want. The instruction loses all its weight. And finally, the biggest and most painful pitfall, taking it personally. When our child looks us right in the eye and says no, we feel tested, we feel disrespected, and we feel like we're failing as parents. But when we take it personally, we are entirely misunderstanding their internal struggle. Most of the time, they aren't thinking about you, your authority, or your feelings at all. They are completely consumed by trying to manage the massive, overwhelming emotions happening inside their own little bodies.
We also have to be really careful about the patterns we establish. If we fall into the trap of just repeating instructions, nagging, and ultimately giving up or doing the task for them out of sheer exhaustion, we accidentally teach them a very dangerous, unintended lesson. We teach them, if I say no long enough, nothing really changes. The boundary disappears, the expectation fades away, the words lose their meaning entirely. We absolutely want to avoid setting up this repetitive, draining dynamic, because at the end of the day, it serves neither you nor the child.
So, what do? Section 5, Strategies that actually work. Working with their brain.
The secret here isn't about finding new ways to force them to comply. It's about seamlessly working with how their brain already functions. Here is a phenomenal, highly effective 4-step toolkit that you can start using today to bypass that no reflex entirely. Step 1. Give them a manufactured sense of control. Step 2. Bring them into the task as a partner. Step 3. Turn the mundane instruction into something playful. And Step 4. Pay close, intentional attention to your tone of voice. Let's look at exactly how this builds, starting with those first 2 steps.
This brings us to a really powerful, game-changing technique called the illusion of choice. This strategy directly and beautifully satisfies a child's deepest need for control without you ever compromising your boundaries. Think about a direct command. Put your shoes on. We now know exactly why this triggers the biological no reflex, right? It's a demand that removes their autonomy. But watch what happens if you shift your approach just slightly. Instead, ask, do you want to put on the red shoes or the blue ones? Hey, do you want to hop to the car like a bunny or stomp to the car like a dinosaur? It's the exact same non-negotiable outcome. Shoes are going on their feet and they are going to the car, but this tiny, brilliant shift in phrasing changes the entire dynamic. Suddenly it feels like their choice. You're actually engaging their developing prefrontal cortex to make a decision, which bypasses the emotional panic of the amygdala. You're granting them the dignity of autonomy while effortlessly getting the necessary task done.
Next, we bring them into the task and make it incredibly playful. Children inherently resist much less when they feel like they are involved in a process, rather than being bossed around by a manager. So instead of telling them what to do, invite them to be your crucial assistant. Ask, hey, can you help me with this really heavy basket? Or, oh no, I forgot how to put this toy away, can you show me? Now, it's no longer you versus them. You're both on the exact same team, and because play is the absolute natural language of children, lean heavily into it. If getting dressed is a struggle, challenge them to a race to see who can put their socks on faster. If toothbrushing is a nightly screaming match, change the narrative entirely. Tell them you've got your imaginary magnifying glass out, and you're going on a serious hunt to search for the tricky sugar bugs hiding all the way in the back on their molars. What used to feel like heavy, demanding pressure instantly transforms into a highly engaging, cooperative game that they actually want to participate in.
And finally, we arrive at the strategy that honestly matters more than anything else we've discussed: your tone. Remember this golden rule. Calm is contagious. Your child isn't just reacting to the dictionary definition of the words you say, they are reacting intensely to the frequency, the volume, and the underlying tension in the way you say them. If you sound tense, stressed, or deeply frustrated, their highly tuned emotional brain immediately senses that threat and throws up the no shield to protect itself. But when you consciously lower your shoulders, take a deep breath, and stay incredibly calm, something profound shifts in the room. By bringing a steady, grounded calm into a chaotic moment, you aren't just altering their immediate behavior, you are practicing something called co-regulation. You are actually offering your calm, mature nervous system to them, helping their developing brain learn exactly how to soothe itself, regulate its breathing, and handle those big, scary emotions safely.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 6, a new perspective. Understanding over stopping. The next time your child looks at you and confidently says no, I want you to try to stop, take a slow breath, and just pause for 1 second. Because that incredibly frustrating moment isn't just about defiance. They aren't trying to fight you, and they're certainly not trying to make your life harder. Try to look at the immense, beautiful growth happening right in front of you. Look at what they are actually learning in these messy moments. They are actively learning where they stand in the world and what their boundaries are. They're learning the incredibly important lesson that they have a voice and that their voice matters. And most importantly, they're learning that they are their own distinct person, entirely separate from you. This process of individuation is a massive, vital developmental milestone. It's exactly what they are supposed to be doing. And sometimes all of that complex, brilliant learning just gets bottle-decked and comes out as one simple, sharp, frustrating word: no.
So instead of seeing that no as an active rebellion that you have to forcefully crush or put a stop to, try seeing it as a desperate communication that you simply need to understand. Because this powerful quote is the ultimate truth of raising kids. Behind that no is a child who still needs you to guide them, to stay steady, to help them feel safe. Beneath the bravado, beneath the yelling, and beneath the refusal, there is a tiny person who is feeling completely overwhelmed by their own rapid growth. They desperately need you to be their unshakable anchor in the middle of their big, messy, overwhelming emotional storms. And when you can consistently show up as that calm anchor, these difficult daily moments don't just become easier to manage. They start to feel very, very different. They become profound opportunities for connection.
Armed with this deep understanding of their developing brain, the brilliant technique of the illusion of choice, and the absolute superpower of a calm, steady tone, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. How will you respond to their very next no? Because let's be real, it's coming, probably sooner than you think. But you now have the exact tools to step confidently out of the exhausting power struggle and step beautifully into deep, meaningful connection. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I truly hope this deep dive helps you see these challenging moments a little differently, gives you a profound sense of peace, and empowers you with real confidence for the wonderful road ahead. Goodbye, everyone, and take care.